I took the first shift driving and narrowly escaped christening the trailer with a nice shiny scratch and dent when I pulled into the gas station to fill up. Shortly thereafter, Tess took over the driving and mostly assumed the task for the rest of the trip, which was fine with me and probably for the best. This allowed me time to read a book we had picked up. Well, actually, we did not just casually pick it up. It was a well-planned evening of espionage at Barnes & Noble. We went in search of a scholarly book on cults, since we were beginning to believe that we may be in one and needed some unbiased scientific research to compare with our belief system. Just some light reading before bed. Well, not exactly. Our recent highly unsupported admission to college had taught us to think critically, and we just needed some information that wasn't fed to us from the Watchtower. Well, while searching around in the religious section, with no book on our topic in stock, another book practically started blinking like a neon sign on the shelf. In what seemed like gigantic letters, the words Jehovah's Witnesses beamed at us, practically screaming at us, "I am what you are looking for." Tess grabbed the book off the shelf, all the while I was scanning the aisles for any Jehovah's Witnesses that may see us actually touching something so not just taboo, but absolutely forbidden. The area was clear. We scanned the book, ducked for cover, and instantly Tess decided this was the book we must read. She bought it while I stood guard. She took it to her house, turned the dust jacket inside out, and hid it in a backpack under a pile of clothes in the back of her closet. We would lock ourselves in her room while our husbands were at work and the kids were at school, and daringly, with elevated heart rates, read a few pages until we heard some creak or noise, damning us, our hands and minds filled with forbidden fruit, so that she would quickly return the book to its hiding place, safe from exposing our blatant, blasphemous wrongdoing. We were not quite halfway through the book when we left on the trip. Since reading such contraband was not only so treacherously dangerous, but few ripe opportunities presented themselves for us to drink in such venomous poison. So with the kids occupied in the back seat, I began reading in a hushed whisper, relaying to Tess the witchery of the book, while my mind bore the fits and spasms of my metamorphosis. And then the conclusion is, as we reached Santa Cruz, the sun was setting. Bright orange slashes of sun split the sky. With such a scene ripe for revelation, I finished the last page of Awakening of Jehovah's Witness, Escape from the Watchtower Society. I closed the book and I said, I am no longer a Jehovah's Witness. And I wasn't. No second thoughts, no doubts. Tess looked at me and smiled. Good, because I haven't been one for a while, and I have been waiting for you.
Tonight I'm going to talk to you just about 2 points about my book, Awakening of a Jehovah's Witness. First, about why I wrote it, and second, about how I wrote it. The reason I chose these topics is because these are the most commonly asked questions. People say, Diane, why did you write this book? Wouldn't it have just been easier just to forget such a terrible experience and just go on with your life? So in order to answer this question, I'd like to refer to history. And according to Greek legend, there was once a peasant named Gordius. And he came rolling into the plaza one day in an ox cart. And this was very significant because an oracle had previously told the people that your next king is going to come into the town in a wagon. So when he came in, the people were so happy and they made him king, according to legend. And so what he did is he dedicated his ox cart to the Greek god Zeus. And so he tied it up to a pillar to preserve it so it would stay there. And he tied it with a special knot. And it was come to be known as the Gordian knot. Now this knot is really a very interesting and curious thing. And it is made with hundreds of strands that are woven together from the cornel bark. And these strands, they're all woven together and they make it into a rope. And then he tied it overhand. And then they tuck the ends into the knot so that you can't find them. And it's very difficult to untie. And he did that for a purpose, to preserve the wagon. And I have a little photo here of what it may have looked like. You can find many versions of it on the internet. But it might have looked something like this. And the thing about it is that many people tried to untie this knot, and they were unable to do so. The thought was perhaps that it got wet and then it shrunk, and then there wasn't enough rope room to manipulate it open. At any rate, everybody who tried to undo the knot failed. until Alexander the Great came on the scene. And this was in the year 333 BC, when Alexander the Great came into town, and of course he's going to try to undo the Gordian knot. And he couldn't do it, and he's really working at it there, and he can't do it. Not to be defeated, though. He thought there's more than one way to do this, and he just drew out his sword, and he just whacked that thing right in half. And that produced the required ends, and he could undo the knot, and the problem was solved. So, from that point on, for people the world over, the Gordian knot has become a metaphor for problems that are difficult, that are intractable, that are seemingly unsolvable, except by a bold stroke. The Gordian knot for me was my bondage to the Watchtower, my life as a Jehovah's Witness, how trapped I was in the Watchtower Society, caught in the web of lies and deceit and mind control in the Watchtower Society as one of Jehovah's Witnesses. And my book became my sword is to cut my knot. Until I wrote this book, my life was literally in knots. I was unable to find the end of my Gordian knot in order to unravel the 25 years of damage that had been done by all that time I spent as a witness. So, writing my book, it actually started out as a tool for my own healing. And later, I decided I really want to expose the unconscionable ways that the Watchtower Society hurts people. The public needed to be warned. And I wanted to help others. I wanted my 25 years to mean something, that it would be used for something good to help other people. So, that's point number one. That's why I wrote the book. And now to go to how I wrote the book. Writing the book started way before I ever put pen to paper. It started when I was still a Jehovah's Witness, and I was trying to extricate myself from that organization, and I was so stuck in it. I decided to do a lot of research on the history of their doctrines, the history of the organization. All of this was hidden from us. 25 years as a witness, I still didn't have any clue about the history of this organization. The things that I uncovered were very damning evidence, and I was looking for this evidence because I needed it. I needed to have a reason, a solid reason to leave the group. I needed to prove that this is not God's organization, because I didn't want to leave it and never look back and doubt if I did the right thing. And so I knew that once I could find that evidence, then I could be free from it. Well, around this time, Dr. Jerry Bergman gave me a call. And Dr. Bergman is actually America's foremost expert on the psychology of Jehovah's Witnesses. And he had read an article that I had written about the Watchtower's very hurtful doctrine about rape. And he read that, and I wrote that for Free Minds Journal, and he called me up and he said, well, I want to write a book, a composite book. I would like to have each chapter written by a different ex-Jehovah's Witness, and I like your writing style. Would you contribute a chapter to my book? So what really became my book started out as a chapter for Jerry's book, and Jerry's book never got written. Anyway, I'd like to share with you just a little bit about my writing process and how the book started. It actually started like this. I was at work one day. I work as a sign language interpreter for the deaf, and I was on a break. And I was sitting in front of a window, kind of gazing out the window, wondering how I'm going to write this chapter for Jerry's book. And all of a sudden, these thoughts just started flooding into my mind, and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm never going to remember this. I got to write it down. So I started searching through my purse for scraps of the backs of receipts, and I got a trash can and went through that and found all these little papers. And I was just writing it as fast as it was coming into my mind. And it's interesting, as a little side note, that most of my book was written and rewritten and reworked, and like authors do. But the information that went on these little papers was published verbatim as how it first came out in chapter 1. So, these scraps of paper, when I was writing on them as the thoughts were coming flooding in, it's like the more I wrote, the more I started feeling like Alexander, cutting deeper and deeper into my Gordian knot, until the ends started appearing. And I started tugging on these things. And as I pulled on these memories, just more and more memories came flooding back to me. These memories became sentences. The sentences became pages. The pages became chapters. And the chapter eventually became my book. Well, like any other project, I was left with a bunch of rope on the floor, so to speak. And it was my task to organize these ropes, these experiences, the research, and the memories that I had into some sort of coherent order so that it could be helpful to other people. And I spent many weeks, many months, really 5 years in total doing that. And it wasn't easy. It's much like trying to do a puzzle of 1,000 pieces with 1,000 eyeballs looking at me. Because, well, I felt like it's a complex task and I'm doing it kind of under the microscope. And the reason I felt that way is because all the time that I was doing the research for the book, which became the basis of many of the chapters there, I was still a Jehovah's Witness. You know, there's this cadre of witnesses ready to pounce on me if they had any idea, any inkling as to what I was doing. So there was that additional stress. I wanted to say that leaving a cult-like group, it's really very, very difficult to do, and it takes a lot of courage for people to leave it. Writing a book about that experience was even much tougher. The reason was that not only did I have these memories coming back, but I had to relive it. I had to relive it to feel that emotion, to be able to write it in a way that would be helpful to other people. A person who is deeply embedded in a cult-like religion, a group like Jehovah's Witnesses, most of them can't just up and leave. Some can, but because of their mind control methods and so forth, it's like when you get in a group like that, your free will is slowly sucked out of you. And there's this constant negative reinforcement by the watchtower in this case. And it induces the reduction of the self to just this little thing. And it encourages the creation of what is known as groupthink. So that, like all Jehovah's Witnesses, they all have to think alike, you all have to believe alike, you have to believe what the leader tells you, and you can't disagree with it. And for me, overcoming that group think to become free to write the book, that was the monumental task for me. So in conclusion, I've told you how I cut my Gordian knot, and I hope that my experience will help all of you to cut your own Gordian knots. So we're going to practice here. And I don't have a sword with me, but I have a modern day scissors, so here we go. And so I encourage you to, there's my dramatic moment there. Just get in there, and I can do it, and you can too. And when you cut your Gordian knot, then you'll be free too. Thank you.